Welcome back to Joy in Our Town. I'm Dolly Velasquez. With me is Pastor Brad Rogers, who is pastor at Penn Avenue Redemption United Methodist Church. Our issue today is youth. And Pastor, we're going to be talking about how devastating it is for our young people, our teenagers, our youth, when one or two parents are incarcerated. What is that impact on that person?
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to start out with a story that'll give an image to people of the impact of incarceration on the youth and the children. When I first started at this ministry 2-3 years ago, one of the first things that I saw, and we have worship twice a week. So we have worship on Thursday, we have worship on Sunday. And I saw the interaction between this mother and daughter, and other family had to bring the daughter there to be able to see her mom. And so they would eat together, they would sing, they would laugh, they'd play games. At the end, though, the inmates that we bring in, we have to bus them back. And so we provide all the transportation, and the mother would get on the bus, she'd roll the window down, and she'd stick her hand out. And outside was this young daughter, and she would stick her hand up, and they would reach and touch. And it's a pretty long distance, and so the only way for them for that last goodbye is to just barely touch hands. And so that image has stuck with me. And that image, I think, is something that we all should think of, because that's a separation of mother, daughter. Whether it's the mom or the dad in the prison, the mom has to go home after that to her center, to her prison, and the daughter has to go to wherever she lives, and they can't talk to each other in the week. They can't have that connection. And so I think of that image, and I think of that with all the children. And the children and the youth, and when they're in school, you know, they have embarrassment about a parent being in prison. They have shame, they have guilt. You know, you and I, if we have feelings, we have words that we can use to describe that. The children haven't developed that language yet. And so as they go through life, they have this pain, and they don't know. And so often we see youth that act out. 7 out of 10 children in Oklahoma who have a parent that's incarcerated will themselves be incarcerated. And so the impact is huge. And so I think of that image of this mother and daughter often, you know, and that the ministry that we provide is for the entire family, but often, you know, for the children. They have a time, instead of going to a prison and going behind the walls and going through the metal detector and going and possibly being patted down, they have a safe place where they can come and just be mom and daughter together, be dad and son together. And so that image of that stretch out is often what I think of Jesus stretching out on the cross. His arms stretching out wide for us. And that image of that mother and daughter is of God reaching down, touching us, and not letting go. And so I think that provides a pretty good overview of the emotional impact that the youth go through. We often say they are the forgotten victims of the crime, the forgotten victims of incarceration.
Do you find that many times the children serve time with their parents when one or more parent is incarcerated?
Most definitely, most definitely. The time away from their parent, whether it's a year or 5 years or 10 years, it is a prison sentence. You know, in Oklahoma, we sentence people to a crime, and often we sentence more people to crimes than any other state does. But we're sentencing the entire family, and certainly the child.
So that child has probably been exposed to a lifestyle that many of us are not familiar with, a lifestyle of drugs. How do you bring healing to these children to be able to, I guess, Pastor, what I'm wondering, I tell you, is that you said 7 out of 10 of the children are going to end up doing the same thing that the parents did. How can you break that cycle?
It is tough, but with God's help, it is possible. We have a man, his name is Tony, and I asked for permission from him to use his story here. And I won't mention the name of his daughter and all of that. I'm protecting her. He was in prison for drugs. He was both an addict and a drug dealer. And when he got pulled over, he said, thank God. He was tired. He was done with that lifestyle. And so he went into our transitional home in the Methodist Church. We have a home called the Exodus House. And so he was able to go in and work on his addiction and those things. Well, that Christmas of his first Christmas out, his desire was to talk to his daughter. His sister had taken his daughter, and she was living with her and her husband. And so he would call, but no answer. And he would do this numerous times. And then finally, really close to Christmas, he's calling, not expecting to be able to talk to her, and his brother-in-law answers the phone and says, hi, Tony. I said, there's a young girl here that wants to talk to you. And so that connection was a healing for the child and for him. Tony is now a badged volunteer. We have to have volunteers that are approved by the state who works with us, and every week he talks about his daughter. And just this past week he talked about his opportunity to be a father, because he gets her every weekend now. And to be a father, and he talked to her about the things that kids shouldn't do or should do, or all this other stuff. And he said, the drugs are so bad, and you just don't want to go down that direction. And she looked at him, she goes, I know, Dad. She goes, I saw you. So yes, youth are educated in this world when their parents are incarcerated in unimaginable ways that creates a lot of difficulty for them.
I would imagine that the child is just torn up with images that they can't get rid of, that it could teeter either way. It could send them soaring into that pit of despair of drug use, or it could teach them and say, I want nothing to do with that.
I think that often, it is, you mentioned a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle they're immersed in, and they know no other way. They know no other way. And so for them, it is who they are. And so they don't think about the differences until maybe later on. But it's like all of us, often when we behave badly or when we react to a certain thing, it's not usually the thing we're behaving or that set us off. It's pain that's deep inside. And so for children, it's the same way. They have pain that's deep inside that they don't understand. And so any little thing that knocks the top off of that can result in behavior in them that we don't understand. So yes, it impacts them greatly. But within the United Methodist Church, and specifically within an umbrella ministry over our church that's called CJAM, Criminal Justice and Mercy Ministries, we have a youth camp that we hold in the summer at Lake Texoma. We have 2 different camps, and it's for the youth that have a parent that's in prison. And they get a chance to come and meet and connect up with other counselors and therapists and have therapeutic games that they play to be able to worship together. But more than anything, they're able to connect with other kids that have the same problem. They don't have to worry about it. They're all in the same boat. There's no shame, there's no guilt there. And so those camps are vital to these kids' lives to be able to provide healing. But maybe more important than anything is they get to come and for a week just be a kid. So
there has to be a process that a child goes through to be able to reconcile with this person that they love dearly. In their minds, I'm wondering, are they thinking, my dad chose drugs over me, or my dad did this to me? How do you minister to the children to be able to heal their hearts and restore their self-image?
It is very difficult. In many ways, it's something that we know is a lifetime of healing. But we have an opportunity to let them to come to the church and to just be kids, but to also hear God's love preached, but also in action. If we just preach about God's love, but we don't interact with them in a loving way and let them be fun, because if you come to our church, it's unlike any other church that you would ever experience. People don't necessarily know how to do church the way we've been brought up, maybe, but we allow that safe space for them to, do these things and to expand and explore. And so the same thing with the kids. We have a daycare that we offer for young children, so that, it's not an impact, for the families with that. But many times the children are there with us in worship, so they can be right next to mom, dad, or sister, brother, grandma, grandpa.
It's precious, Pastor, that you have worship, because I feel that's what happened to me in the throne room. I didn't have a parent that was incarcerated, but I had a parent that, quite frankly, she was missing the mommy gene. And my thoughts as a young child and even a young adult were, could any good thing come out of that woman's womb? All the horrible things that she did, am I going to do that to my husband? All the horrible ways that she treated her children, am I going to treat my children the same way? And God spoke to my heart in worship one day, because I had told my husband that a cocoon would come over me of oppression. Could any good thing come out of that woman's womb? And just to kind of relieve myself, I told my husband, well, we take more after my father, my earthly father. He was a kinder person. And in worship at church that morning, as I was entered into the throne room, God spoke to me and said, you do take after your father. And it's so precious how you are teaching these families to enter into the throne room of God, where there's healing, there's restoration, there's identity, and most of all, there's a new bloodline that we carry, courses through our veins, and that we pass on through our children. And then forgiveness for the inmates. How precious is that? With about 30 seconds left, Pastor, what would be your final thought concerning this area?
My final thought is that we need to understand that the issue is significant, but that with God's help, we are able to come together, friends, family, in times that maybe aren't always the most easy situations, and provide an area for God's work to happen.
Thank you so much. And on the bottom of the screen, you can check the website and get more information. We'll see you next time at Join Our Town.